Every single time, every single crime, every single lie, early lie. Every single hour, every single day, every single night, early lie. I know it's hard to believe it's the whole forest, not one tree, and it's every branch and leaf. They're born to deceive, but I'm telling you the truth. It's not just one or two, it's every single Jew. They all hate you, and it really breaks my heart. But their lies are off the charts, and they only bring us harm. You gotta get smart. So if you want to be safe and don't want to get replaced, it's best you start being based, or you'll get erased. Every single time, every single crime, every single lie, early life. Every single hour, every single day, every single night, early life. I know it's hard to accept that all the ones you've met lie with every single breath. They want you dead, but you must not be weak. Just open your eyes and see they always exploit the meek. See their vampire teeth, and it can make you cry to learn your life was full of lies and their face was a disguise. But you must fight. So if you want to live and protect all of your kin, you have to grow thick skin, or we won't. Every single time, every single crime, every single lie, early life. Every single hour, every single day, every single night, early life.
And we are live, guys. What's up? Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream, ninjas. We are live on all the platforms. Sorry for the delay. X was acting weird as usual, but you know, we're able to get things going. Welcome to the stream, my ninjas. Welcome to the stream. We are going to be covering a bunch of things today. We're going to be covering Russia conflict, and we are also going to be covering updates on the Diddy case as well. Welcome. So let's go ahead and get right into it, because I got a shorter day today. I got to go ahead and do an interview at 6:30. So I will be on for roughly an hour and a half on this one, a little bit shorter, but it's okay because we got a subathon for y'all planned later, and that's going to be a good time. So without further ado, let's just get right into it, guys. Okay. Basically, I think this is testimony that came from today. As you guys know, I covered the Diddy case. Every day I'm giving you guys updates on what's going on, and I will be going back to New York for closing arguments. But let's see what the latest is.
Who was bleeding and then blamed everybody else in the room. That's the kind of who beat a woman who was bleeding and then blamed everybody else in the room. That's the kind of guy I'm supposed to give the benefit of the doubt to. This is just one more in a pile of steaming you-know-what that is being lumped onto that man every single day. And it doesn't matter how expensive and skilled his attorneys are. You get the case you're given. And they were given a real stinker. And all I can say to this is it is a really good thing that Sean Puffy Diddy Love, Puff Daddy Combs loves applesauce, because they serve that regularly in prison.
How long does witness 2 have to present herself? And will legal action be taken against her? I think that this is in regards to Jane, who we've heard about, alleged victim number 2 in this case, came up in opening statements. Another person, a single mother who apparently had a relationship with Sean Combs, helped to further the narrative of sex trafficking. I guess the question is, what should we expect from her testimony? How does she have to present herself? How important she is? Let's just recharacterize the question that way, Ashley.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what she's going to say clearly, but I suspect beat a woman that who was what I've seen already a lot of witnesses do, and that is corroborating the stories of the witnesses that came before them. It is remarkable how carbon copy many of their testimonies have been in describing down to the details in hotel rooms, how things are laid out. Unless all of these witnesses got together and had a coffee clutch and decided to get their stories straight, they sure do have similar accounts of life with Diddy. And perhaps Jane.
Okay, and then here's someone else that testified today.
Hey there, everybody.
Deontay Nash testified today, it seems. Let's see here what he said, and I'll tell you guys about him as well. Let's go to this because I don't really care what that old bitch got to say.
I'm Jesse Weber, and thank you for joining us for our live coverage here on Law and Crime of the Sean Diddy Combs criminal sex crimes trial lot.
And this is week 3, by the way, chat. This is week 3. They've already went through 17 witnesses now at this point. 17. If you guys are wondering, I did an episode where I covered the first 16 witnesses in detail, gave you guys summaries, and I gave a summary of Capricorn yesterday, so feel free to check that out. Now they went ahead and had another witness, a guy named Deontay Nash, come in today as one of the witnesses.
Going on today in court. We have a great panel of guests. I'm going to introduce them in a minute. We're going to be taking your questions for the next hour, not only about what's happening in court today, but what has happened over the past several days, what's happened in the past several weeks. What do you think about the case at this point? If you have a question, submit it on YouTube. We're going to answer it in real time. I am made of questions because let me tell you about what happened today. And then we're going to get Elizabeth Milner on, who's been in that courtroom, to give us a play-by-play too. But the testimony today was regarding the alleged break-in at Kid Cudi's house, the alleged firebombing of his car. I've said it before, I said it again. Kid Cudi, very important witness in this case to establish some of the underlying crimes for the overall racketeering charge. So arson that came out of testimony today. You had this member of the Los Angeles Police Department saying that there was an Escalade registered.
Yeah, so I think someone that testified today was the police. And this guy's an HSI agent, by the way. This dude right here that's shaking Cudi's hand, this guy's an HSI agent, and so is this guy right here.
To Bad Boy Records that was found near the crime scene, near the scene of the break-in. There was some.
This is Cudi coming out of the courtroom last week when he testified.
Very interesting cross-examination, too, that we'll get into as well. A lot of discussion about DNA that was found on this glass bottle, the Molotov cocktail that was used in the firebombing of his car, the alleged firebombing of his car, that it belonged to a female contributor. Not entirely sure who that is. Big back and forth between the prosecutors.
So, Los Angeles arson investigator. Yeah, so my guy told me yesterday that the people that would testify today would be from LAPD, the arson people. As you guys know, Diddy allegedly cut a hole into Kid Cudi's car and threw a Molotov cocktail in there, right? So I'll show you guys real quick. So this is one of the government exhibits they showed, right? This big hole right here. And then let's see if we can get the other one. This is inside the car. You can see here the thing kind of came in and exploded here and started lighting things on fire. The door, passenger side door. And this was back 15 years ago, back in 2011, chat.
Prosecution and defense regarding fingerprint cards and whether they were apparently destroyed. Defense objected to
around 15 years ago.
Yes, they objected to this line of questioning because they said it now puts in the minds of the jury that it looks like Combs or his team is responsible for destroying this piece of evidence. There was also discussion about a glove that wasn't tested for DNA. Was it maybe worn by the person who allegedly threw the Molotov cocktail? And then right before they went to lunch, a celebrity stylist gets on the stand. Deontay Nash worked for Diddy and Cassie. And I will tell you, based on just my reading of the transcript, what personality this guy has. And also quite relevant to Cassie Ventura's testimony, alleged victim number 1 in this case, really, really important. So without further ado, I want to bring on Elizabeth Milner, Law and Crimes reporter, who is...
So the arson investigator testified and this Deontay Nash guy. So his name also came up during the testimony, guys, someone that basically worked for Diddy. The arson investigators, they're bringing them because the reason why, you guys are probably wondering, why are they spending so much time on this Kid Cudi event? The reason why they're spending so much time on this Kid Cudi event, chat, is because this is a RICO case. And for a RICO case, you need predicate offenses to influence the racketeering of the organization. So arson is one of the crimes that suffices under racketeering. So that is why they're bringing in the arson investigator that investigated the fire. They brought in Kid Cudi to talk about it from her first-hand experience as the victim. They brought in Cassie, and she spoke about the Diddy giving Diddy the address and all this other stuff. They brought in Capricorn because Capricorn was there when Diddy went with his bodyguard to Kid Cudi's house and broke in. So they're bringing all these different individuals to corroborate that an arson was committed in late 2011 due to Kid Cudi dating Cassie and Diddy being jealous, and then their subsequent meeting after that and everything else like that. That is why it's so important for them to iron out this scenario, this event, so to speak, this arson event, because the arson is going to be used as one of the predicate offenses, okay, to justify their RICO case. Okay, to be honest with you, I think they got it pretty airtight. They got multiple witnesses corroborating the same story. All of them gave a very similar story. There's only really one discrepancy where Kid Cudi said when he got there, Diddy wasn't there, versus Capricorn says that they chased him off, which is a bit odd. But in general, the main facts of the case are Diddy went to Cudi's house, broke in, and then, you know, the car was firebombed shortly thereafter, right?
Has been in
Now, what I will say, though, and what this Diddy's defense did talk about, which is good, so Cudi's Porsche was firebombed on January 9, 2011, or 2012, excuse me, January 9, 2012. At that point, Cudi and Cassie had stopped talking, right? So for the, you know, the defense was saying, why would Diddy firebomb your Porsche when you guys were already done? You know what I mean? Like, you and Cassie were done. And then they met the day after Diddy allegedly firebombed on or about January 10, 2012. And that's when Cudi walked in and said that they met at the Soho Hotel, and Diddy was sitting there, was standing looking at the window with his hand behind the back like a Marvel supervillain, right? So this was on or about January 10th. And then Cassie showed up later on saying, hey, I'm sorry, whatever the fuck it may be. But basically, okay, so here's the timeline. Cassie and Cudi start dating in late 2011. Diddy finds out and hits Cassie. Cassie calls Cudi. Cudi comes and picks her up. When Cudi picks her up, he takes her to the Marquis Hotel. Diddy, furious and looking for Cassie, goes to Cudi's house because he knows Cudi's address, thanks to Cassie being an idiot. He goes to Cassie's house and takes Capricorn with him. Capricorn is one of his assistants. While they're at the house, Capricorn calls Cudi and Cassie and says, hey, I'm here at your house, Cudi, because Cudi, Cassie, and Capricorn were all friends. Diddy's in there right now with one of his guys. I think it was Ruben or whatever. So Cudi says, what the fuck? He calls Diddy and says, yo, motherfucker, you in my house? And basically, Diddy doesn't really confirm or deny, but he says, we need to talk. And Cudi's like, okay, I'm on my way. So Cudi goes over there. He goes. He sees that his cameras are pointed down at the floor, his security system, goes into the house, his Christmas presents are open, and his dog is locked inside the bathroom, right? Nothing was destroyed or stolen. Now, with that said, after that, Cudi and Cassie went to New London, because Cassie lives in New London, Connecticut, to spend Christmas with her family. This was after this whole, break-in. After they spent time with each other at Christmas, that's where Cassie takes the pictures of her being bruised and shit like that, okay? Because Diddy had basically given her the fucking Spartan kick, bong, and kicked her in the back, and they left some bruising. Now, after that was done, they went back to California, and, Cudi went back to California. Cassie told her mom she was going to California, but she didn't. She actually went to Arizona. So her and Diddy reconciled. She went to Phoenix to go meet Diddy, while Cudi went to California. At that point, they stopped talking to each other. This is late, December 2011, and early January of 2012. Shortly thereafter, his car is firebombed on the 9th. Then he meets with Diddy on or about the 10th. And they pretty much squash it there. And Cudi asks him when he meets him, he shakes his hand and says, hey, what about my car? And Diddy looks at him and says, what car? Right? So that's the timeline of events. Now, who they brought in here, right, on this day was an arson investigator to talk about what they found at the scene in their investigation. And no one was ever arrested for this arson case. And the way that Diddy's defense tried to frame it is like, bro, why would he firebomb your car when y'all were done at this point? You and Cassie weren't talking anymore. You guys were over, right? Now, unbeknownst to Cudi, Cassie got back with Diddy when she went to Arizona. He didn't know that, though. He found that out when he showed up on January 10th to talk to Diddy, and she showed up as well, that they got back together. And he was pissed off about that. Basically, Cassie played both of them. And this is what Brian Steele, Diddy's attorney, had kind of got out through cross-examination. Give me ones in the chat if that timeline makes sense. Just so you guys understand this whole Kid Cudi event. Because this is very important to the RICO case, chat. Extremely important. They're going to use this as one of the prerequisite crimes. That's why they're bringing all these witnesses in and going through this story tooth and nail. Give me ones if that all makes sense for you guys. Man, it really helps being in a courtroom, guys. I'll tell y'all this, man. I'm getting this testimony first. I got a lot of this testimony for you guys firsthand, and I'm kind of just weaving everything for you guys together. I took parts from all their testimony and gave you guys the summary. Because I watched all of them talk about this event. Awesome. I see a bunch of ones. All right, let's keep going.
In that courtroom every day for testimony. Elizabeth, so great to see you. I have to start with Deontay Nash, okay? Because I can feel the personality through the court updates. Talk to us about, this was, again, right before the lunch break, called by the prosecution. What did he say, and how was his testimony relevant to Cassandra Ventura?
Well, I'm not going to lie, Jesse. I absolutely love everything about Deontay Nash being on the witness stand. He's funny, he's sassy, and look, when I see it, if I were to see an exhibit photo of myself and I looked in in this glamorous headshot, I would tell the entire courtroom too that I looked fabulous and stunning, and there was just
He's one of these flamboyant niggas.
this eruption of laughter inside the courtroom. And so Deontay Nash definitely at some points during his testimony, the personality is brought out, but he is there to talk about a lot of substance too. And that is just about his working relationship with Cassie Ventura as well as even Diddy.
Yeah, guys, this is the girl that's in the courtroom. This girl is, I spoke to her on multiple occasions. She's a law and crime person. Guys, there's a bunch of YouTubers over there right now. The biggest YouTubers that I know that are there, there's 4 of them that I know. There's law and crime, obviously, they're the biggest one. There's Armand, and then who else? Tisa Tales, and then me. So
he styled both of them. However, he did have kind of a better friendship.
Oh, and Rotten Mangoes, or yeah, I think it's Rotten Mango or some shit like that.
And relationship with
Asian girl
Cassie, and he witnessed a lot according to his testimony during his time while he had worked as a stylist with her. And so we're introduced to Deontay Nash around 12 o'clock-ish, right before the lunch break. He was the last witness who was called before we went to lunch, and so he was kind of explaining just how he had started working with Diddy and Cassie. He started off as an intern for Derek Roche, and Derek Roche was actually Diddy's stylist. And when Deontay's on the witness stand, Jesse, he's not even referring to him as Diddy or Sean Combs. He calls him Puff or Puffy. That is what he calls him by, and that's normally the
everybody calls Diddy Puff.
The name that he's familiar with.
Everyone that knows Diddy personally calls him Puff because his original name was Puff Daddy for a very long time. First it was Puff Daddy, then P Diddy, then Diddy.
And so we do see that exhibit photo of Deontay Nash. It was a glamour shot of him. And of course, he said that he looked amazing and fabulous. And I'm sure the transcript read just that. But just being inside the courtroom, it definitely was kind of a good, funny, highlighted moment. And then it got more serious from there. So he was explaining that he had worked with Diddy and Cassie from 2008 to 2018. So about a 10-year period. Then we get into the 2009 to 28 time frame, which is a long time. But Maureen Comey, who did the questioning under the direct examination, was essentially asking some foundational questions just about how much time Deontay spent with Cassie. And he said he spent pretty much every single day with Cassie. He said he saw Diddy and Cassie together, though, about once a week, but that's still a pretty often time. And then he was asked, what were the names that Diddy referred to Cassie as?
Yeah, for those freak-offs. As you guys know, Diddy was having these freak-offs at least once a week, according to Cassie.
So first, Deontay was like, oh, baby girl, Cassie. But then he said that Diddy would also refer to her as the B word. He would call her an SLUT. He would call her a hoe. But he said it's the B word that was his favorite word to use in reference to his own girlfriend, that being Cassie. And he said...
This nigga Diddy, bro. Calling Cassie a bitch every day. Also, just so you guys know, they had a volatile relationship. They'll fight with each other a lot. You know, Cassie would talk back to him. It'd infuriate him. Like, yeah.
He, being Deontay, said that Diddy would call Cassie an outright hoe, an outright SLUT. And I'm sorry, guys, I know I have to be very careful with just the words that I can say on air. But Deontay explained that when Diddy would call her these names and when he would use these words against her, that Cassie would be sad. She would be depressed about this name calling. Deontay went on to explain that Diddy threatened Cassie a number of times, threatened to release her sex tapes, send those sex tapes to her.
Okay, that's important because Cassie was alleging, this is very important, chat. So one of the things on Cassie's testimony that she spent a significant amount of time talking about was how she didn't want to leave because she felt as though Diddy would put the sex tapes out and embarrass her and ruin her career in doing so. Now, with that said, this is where we kind of run into a bit of a conflict because on one side, Cassie's saying, hey, he had these videos of me, he would hold it over me, and he would say that he was going to release them and embarrass me, right? But we also know, even according to her testimony, that there was this guy that asked her, hey, or told her, hey, Cassie, I got, word is that there's a sex tape going around about you. What did she do? She called Diddy and said, hey, this guy's telling me that there's a sex tape out about me or whatever. And Diddy told her, don't let him out of your sight and make sure that you get to the bottom of it, right? He was in LA, she was in New York and / New Jersey at the time. So he obviously had a very vested interest in ensuring that video didn't get out either, right? Which is contrary to what she's saying where, oh, he held these videos above me and I couldn't leave, right? Another instance was one of their escorts that they would use to have sex threatened to release a sex video or one of these freak-off videos. And obviously Cassie got nervous and Diddy did too. And Diddy actually ended up spending a lot of money, someone said to the tune of I think academics reported $5 million, spent about $5 million to pay this escort off to not release the footage, okay? So, and then on top of that, right, which I think the defense did a really good job here, the defense said, okay, well, if Diddy had these freak-off videos and wanted to ruin your life and release them, why do you have the videos on your devices? Because, guys, the freak-off videos that are still in existence, who did they come from? They came from Cassie. They did not come from Diddy. They came from Cassie, okay? And it was really interesting for the defense to kind of show this. So that's where the issue lies. Now, obviously, Deontay is confirming this allegation that Diddy held the videos over her head, but there has been conflicting evidence presented at trial where in some instances Diddy doesn't want the videos out, and then in others they're saying, oh, he did want the videos out, but he doesn't have any, at least the government didn't find any videos of the freak-offs on Diddy's person through all the search warrants.
Her parents threatened to beat Cassie's behind, and it drove Cassie essentially crazy. She would cry, she would stay in the house. Deontay explained that Cassie would essentially cocoon up when Diddy would just call her these names, and Diddy threatened not to release her music, something that the government has talked about at length throughout a bunch of different witness testimony. And around this time frame from 2012, 2013-ish, again, when Deontay was still working with Diddy and Cassie, Deontay explained that Diddy threatened to do something to Cassie.
Now, you can also make the argument, his defense made this as well, to this argument that, oh, Diddy always threatened to not release her music. Well, Diddy actually put her in touch with a lot of artists that she ended up working with. She worked with Nicki Minaj, Lil Wayne, obviously Kid Cudi, because Diddy actually set Kid Cudi up with Cassie to do music together, and they ended up having a romantic relationship, which is why he got so pissed off. So on the defensive side, they say, did he really inhibit your career when he's putting you in touch with all these different artists and you're recording music? But who knows?
Cassie's parents. Now, they didn't elaborate what this threat was, but I'm sure once we get back from the lunch break, they'll kind of expand more on just that. But it seems like from Deontay's point of view that Diddy threatened Cassie a number of times. Diddy even threatened Cassie and Deontay that Cassie couldn't go out with Deontay and that she needed to bring her behind home, essentially, and that Cassie again would be referred to as the B word, and that Cassie would have to essentially do whatever Diddy said, whether it was how her appearance looked, whether her hair was down a certain way, whether it was up a certain way. And so I think as far as just the direct examination goes, yes, we did have a funny moment at the beginning of testimony, but really just getting into just kind of the weight of the testimony, it seems that Deontay is kind of, in essence, kind of giving more credibility to a lot of the other witness testimony, just about how mean and potentially forceful Diddy was against her.
Right, when you're talking about violence, threats, verbal abuse, it's all important for force, fraud, coercion, right? The underlying elements for sex trafficking. And also goes to the larger theme of why Cassie didn't walk away, why she didn't fight back, why didn't she report Sean Combs? It's a big issue in this case. And talking about that power dynamic is something that's already come up in the past few weeks, and obviously something that's being explored with his testimony. There was a lot of testimony this morning regarding Kid Cudi.
So now at this point, guys, we got how many people testified? Capricorn is 17, 18 was the arson investigator, and then this Deontay Nash guy makes it 19 pretty much.
Because Kid Cudi had taken the stand last week, said that he had this relationship with Cassandra Ventura, and then was retaliated against by Sean Combs, that his house was broken into, his car was torched. And I got to ask you, Elizabeth, based on the testimony today from, I believe, members of Los Angeles Police Department and the fire department, it seems like that might have happened, that his house was broken into and that his car was actually firebombed, right? I mean,
well, we know that for a fact because we got the video. I mean, sorry, the pictures of his car firebombed.
Los Angeles Police Department and the fire department. It seems like that might have happened.
Hey guys, smash that like button. We got only 467 likes. We got 1,500 of you guys watching right now on YouTube. We just started up, like the video, ninjas. Then we're going to get into the Russia stuff.
That his house was broken into and that his car was actually firebombed, right? I mean, what were some of the highlights?
But every day during this trial, guys, I will be giving you guys an update on what's going on the trial. Then we'll get into the other news as well. We cover it all over here, baby. We do, true crime, geopolitics. We do it all, baby.
Regarding that testimony about whether this in fact did happen.
Yeah, well, we heard a lot of evidence this morning, especially with the first witness that was called to the stand, and that was Officer Christopher Ignacio. He does work with the LAPD. And he was just explaining his response to the December 2011, this happened December 22nd of 2011, the response to the break-in at Kid Cudi's home. And so it was just interesting kind of hearing his perspective just from an evidentiary standpoint, from a police perspective. And so he says that he was dispatched around 8:20 a.m. that day about a possible suspect kind of staring down near and around the house. And so he responded, and when he responded, what did he see? He noticed right off the bat a black Escalade. And it's interesting that that was one of the first things he said when he was talking about his response, because what did we learn just yesterday when Capricorn Clark was on the stand? That Diddy, Ruben, and Capricorn Clark, according to her testimony, traveled down to Kid Cudi's house in what? A black Escalade. And so Officer Ignacio was explaining that he didn't notice the passengers inside the vehicle because there was so much heavy tint on the windows. But what he did notice was a particular license plate. And he said that that license plate number stuck out to him. He remembered that license plate number. He explained that while they had arrived to the house, his partner had jumped over the fence to kind of let...
Wait, hold on one sec.
Plate number stuck out to him. Noticed the passengers inside the vehicle because there was so much heavy tint on the windows. But what he did notice was a particular license plate. And he said that that license plate number stuck out to him. He remembered that license plate number. He responded, and when he responded, what did he see? He noticed right off the bat a black Escalade.
About whether this in fact did happen.
Okay, Lance Jimenez, Los Angeles arson investigator. Also, another thing for you guys as well, with the arson investigator, my guy Chad is saying that there were fingerprints that were supposed to be there that got destroyed.
It's all important for force, fraud, coercion, right? The underlying elements for sex trafficking. And also goes to the larger theme of why Cassie didn't walk away, why she didn't fight back, why didn't she report Sean Combs? It's a big issue in this case. And talking about that power dynamic is something that's already come up in the past few weeks, and obviously something that's being explored with his testimony. There was the
government is trying to say that she was coerced and forced versus the defense is saying she was an adult and she made the decision to stay with Diddy.
A lot of testimony this morning regarding Kid Cudi, because Kid Cudi had taken the stand last week, said that he had this relationship with Cassandra Ventura, and then was retaliated against by Sean Combs, that his house was broken into, his car was torched. And I got to ask you, Elizabeth, based on the testimony today from, I believe, members of Los Angeles Police Department and the fire department, it seems like that might have happened, that his house was broken into and that his car was actually firebombed, right? I mean, what were some of the highlights regarding that testimony about whether this in fact did happen?
Yeah, well, we heard a lot of evidence this morning, especially with the first witness that was called to the stand, and that was Officer Christopher Ignacio. He does work with the LAPD, and he was just explaining his response to the December.
Okay, so he's probably more than likely a patrol guy that showed up, and he was the first responder, first one to get there on the scene.
2011, this happened December 22nd of 2011, the response to the break-in at Kid Cudi's home. And so it was just...
Oh, okay, so the break-in is first. So the firebombing guys happened January 9th, but the break-in was December 22nd, 2011, which makes sense. That's 3 days before they went over to Connecticut for Christmas.
Interesting kind of hearing his perspective just from an evidentiary standpoint, from a police perspective. And so he says that he was dispatched around 8:20 a.m. that day about a possible suspect kind of staring down near and around the house. And so he responded, and when he responded, what did he see? He noticed right off the bat a black Escalade.
That's a big deal.
It's interesting that that was one of the first things he said when he was talking about his response, because what did we learn just yesterday when Capricorn Clark was on the stand? That Diddy, Ruben, and Capricorn Clark, according to her testimony, traveled down to Kid Cudi's house in what? A black Escalade. And so Officer Ignacio was explaining that he didn't notice the passengers inside the vehicle because there was so much heavy tint on the windows. But what he did notice was a particular license plate.
Remember, that SUV was what was Capricorn, Diddy, and Ruben used to go to Cudi's house.
And he said that that license plate number stuck out to him. He remembered that license plate number. He explained that.
Wow, remember the license plate number.
While they had arrived to the house, his partner had jumped over the fence to kind of let him in to the door. So they opened the door. No one was home at the time, but what they did notice was some unwrapped gifts. And it's interesting because while Kid Cudi was testifying, he said that there were gifts unwrapped in the kitchen area.
Chanel items.
These were fancy gifts, kind of like Chanel bags and watches, that type of thing. And so then later on, more
3 days before Christmas.
detectives arrived to this area. But it's interesting, Jesse, because he was explaining that, excuse me, he was explaining that when they had exited the home, they noticed that same exact black Escalade kind of driving back towards the hill, driving at a slower pace, around 10 to 15 miles per hour. He said around the first time he saw the black Escalade that they were driving off fast, which I think also goes to verify Capricorn Clark's explanation, or Capricorn Clark's testimony yesterday, where she was explaining how she, Ruben, and Diddy had all spotted Kid Cudi's car. They chased him and then, excuse me, later returned. And so
now Cudi's story, he was not chased. He got there and they weren't there. That's Cudi's story. Capricorn's saying they chased him. He's saying that he got there and they weren't there, which he's a rapper, might not want to look like a bitch and say, yeah, they chased me around and I was scared.
So right before the direct examination ended, we see this exhibit photo, and I think that the prosecution kind of did a big like aha moment here, because we see the DMV vehicle registration, and I know you kind of spoiled it anyway, Jesse, but that vehicle was registered to Bad Boy Productions, Inc.
Cooked. Yep. That's a fucking rap. Yep. They 100% have him on the arson now, chat. They 100% have him on the arson now. Holy fuck. Wow. That is fucking air fried, bro. Yep. That's it. That he might go down for Rico now, chat, honestly. Oh man. Wow. The fact, because here's the thing that you guys need to understand, right? So witness testimony is always spotty, right? But when you have witness testimony from multiple witnesses, then you're able to corroborate that testimony with something legitimate like DMV records. Cooked, bro. They got him 100% on the arson. And that arson is going to be used as a predicate offense to substantiate the RICO.
And it was the exact same license plate that...
They got him 100% on the fucking arson. Now, I don't know if they got, or the break-in, excuse me. Let me rephrase. They got him 100% on the break-in.
Officer Ignacio had first spotted. And so that was the big moment just from his testimony. Obviously, under the cross-examination, it was really picked apart just as far as his response goes to investigating this break-in. Whether or not that there were dead ends around the Hollywood Hills neighborhood, and maybe that was an explanation as to why the black Escalade was seen again. And I think
I'm going to reach out to this chat.
When Brian Steele was doing the cross-examination, he was poking holes where holes needed to have been poked, right? He was asking questions as far as why a BOLO response wasn't put out, why no arrests were made, why nothing was charged beyond just trespassing. It was no burglary charge or no robbery charge, any of that sort. He didn't spot a car chasing another car. And he didn't hear about a kidnapping in this matter, and that there was no property disturbed, even though there was gifts open that Kid Cudi says weren't open when he had left his home. And so those were the big highlights from his testimony. Then we get into arson investigator Lance Jimenez. And I think Lance Jimenez is...
Okay, so we know for a fact, December 22nd, Diddy was there. He broke into his house. That is confirmed.
Testimony was pretty interesting today because
100% confirmed. That license plate match is cooked.
Because he is an arson investigator, and he was really kind of explaining just the ins and outs of investigating this type of firebomb or car bomb, but particularly this Molotov cocktail that was lodged into Kid Cudi's home, according to him. He says that he observed when he had responded to the call that he had observed this car parked close to the garage, and then he saw this black Porsche 911. He saw that there was a cutout roof inside the Porsche, something that we've all seen from those exhibit photos.
Yep, I showed you guys the picture. This is what he's referring to right here, this cutout.
And he said that his initial hypothesis was the engine wasn't damaged, the back seats weren't necessarily damaged, the weather was good that day, so this wasn't a natural accident. This wasn't because of the weather or anything like that. He's believed, especially after smelling things like gasoline coming from that glass bottle, that he believed this was a Molotov cocktail. And so we see a whole bunch of different exhibits. We see exhibits of Kid Cudi's front door. We see exhibits of Kid Cudi's driveway with the black Porsche there. It was burned. We see the roof, and Jimenez has said that he believes that that roof was actually cut intentionally. We see the interior of Kid Cudi's Porsche, where you can see a glass bottle. You can see a handkerchief over into the console area, which is kind of like this designery silky cloth material. And he believed that that was kind of the root in the damage as far as what had happened. And so he summed up his conclusion, because we saw a whole bunch of different exhibits too that I'm sure we'll get into more later on, Jesse. But his conclusion was that someone took this bottle, put gasoline in it, put a cloth over it, cut the roof out. The cloth fell out whenever the Molotov cocktail was lodged into the roof. And so that fire ended up being contained specifically to the car. Now, he says that he's investigated arson when it comes to Molotov cocktails before. He has a lot of experience. He's been doing this he's been doing arson investigations since the earliest around 2011. So he's been doing this a long time. And he said, surprisingly, that the damage wasn't as bad as he's seen in other instances that involve Molotov cocktails. He explained that it could have been so much worse, where the fire could have just essentially exploded the car, only leaving the frames of the car. The car could have, the fire.
Now, according to Kid Cudi, the car was totaled, obviously, after this. Was not repairable whatsoever.
Fire from the car could have even went over to the house or to the garage area.
I don't think most auto insurance companies would cover this. Molotov cocktail damage? I don't think that's in the coverage.
The damage could have been a lot worse than it actually was. So that was a surprising tidbit that he had said today, where he explained that even though a Molotov cocktail was lodged into the car, and as Kid Cudi had explained while he was testifying, that he could not refix the car was beyond repair, that according to investigator Lance Jimenez, essentially this fire could have been a lot worse. But what's also interesting, Jesse, is that when we start to get into the fingerprints and just the DNA that was collected, essentially the defense thought it was kind of enough for the grounds of a mistrial. Why? Because the government was essentially asking questions as far as whether or not fingerprints were taken inside the car and around the car. But the victim in this case, the victim obviously being Scott Mescudi, aka Kid Cudi, he had someone do fingerprints after the break-in at his home. He submitted these fingerprints over to officials, and officials officially had this fingerprint card. But the thing is he was asked, he being investigator Lance Jimenez, was asked by Mary Slavic while he was questioned under direct, did you find this unusual? Because the fingerprint cards were later destroyed. So he was asked, do you find this unusual? Has evidence ever been destroyed before? Obviously, there was going to be an objection from the defense. Obviously, there was going to be a sidebar because the defense did not want this information to be heard from the jury. So when the jury had to kind of leave the room for a quick break for arguments outside the presence of the jury, they were just really getting into it. And Alexandra Shapiro just got up and was like, we have the ground, or I believe there's enough grounds for a mistrial. And everyone just kind of was like, okay, what is about to happen? And obviously, we know that didn't necessarily happen because another witness was called later on. But it really seemed like the defense was very upset and found this to be extremely prejudicial against their client.
Because it makes the jury believe, the argument is that someone destroyed the fingerprint cards and that someone was Sean Combs or a member of his team. And I know that the judge even questioned the prosecutor about why you would even ask questions like this. And at the end, told the jury to disregard the commentary about the fingerprint cards. I mean, the genie's, it's already out of the bottle. I mean, they already heard it. Well, they're not supposed to consider it, but they're human beings. Okay, Elizabeth, before I let you go, one more question. So we're taking a bunch of questions from YouTube right now. Again, I have an all-star panel that I'm going to bring on in a minute. But before I do, we have a question from Leg7K that is for you, Elizabeth. The question is, hi, hope all is well. I have a question for Elizabeth Milner. What's her opinion on the jury so far? How are they holding up?
Well, I think the jury is holding up exceptionally well. I think the jury is very much how they've always been. They've been very involved in this case. And by involved, I mean they're taking notes down. They're listening to this testimony. From what I can see of them when I'm sitting inside the gallery, I don't see any heads kind of nodding off, falling asleep, any of that sort. But I'm kind of wondering about the jury myself, whether or not they found this kind of aha moment, the same as us maybe in the press or other members in the gallery, where that big moment where we had seen that defense exhibit about the vehicle registration being to Bad Boy Entertainment or to Bad Boy Incorporated. So as far as I could tell from the jury, they definitely are still very attentive from it, and they're definitely...
All right, bam. All right, let's read some chats and then get into the other stuff real quick here, guys. Got a subathon for y'all as well. Daryl Philbin says, what does it mean when you kick your girl out because she not following your rules and she tries to shame you in a bunch of text ad hominems? Also, I own my house car 50 hours. I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Brooksy says, the Tate brothers were just hit with extradition warrant for rape and abuse of women from the UK. They already had those charges, man. That was his pet name for her. Okay. Cornell's. Alan Hurd says, Alan Hurd says, Putin got blamed for everything. He didn't do, the only thing we can do is let him take what he wants, go to war with Clay. Our military is cookie soft because okay. All right, Alan. And then he says, Farrakhan Iron, Goody My Nils, America ain't ready to go to war. They wants to activate a 1775 cap. Bro, please spell check your things, man. I don't know what you're saying here. Larry Hoover is freed. Trump commuted his death sentence. That comes from Nav. Appreciate you, Nav. Yeah, they commuted a sentence today. And let's see, anything else? Matt Murdoch says, if you haven't seen it already, can you react to the viral video on Twitter of two female Secret Service agents fighting outside Barack's house? I mean, there's nothing really to react to. They're retarded. They're fucking retarded for that. I did see the video. Two Secret Service agents got in a fight basically over like one of them showing up late or some shit like that. So, yeah. All right, so here we go. Let's get into Russia, Ukraine now. We're going to move on to the next topic, and then I'll be on for another 40 or 50 minutes, guys. We got another interview. We're going to do an interview with Noble Gold. We're going to talk gold, man. We're going to talk some money. We're going to talk gold. And then we're going to do after hours for you guys. And then we are going to, have a good show for y'all. So let's see here. Russia bombards Ukraine with one of the largest air assaults of the war. The attack involved nearly 370 missiles and drones, according to Ukrainian Air Force. At least 12 people were killed. Right, so Russia launched one of its largest air assaults in Ukraine since the start of the war, killing at least 12 people. Hours-long assault in Ukraine by Russia with missiles and drones underscore how months of diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire failed to yield a breakthrough. You guys can see absolutely fucking decimated some parts. So there was the second largest scale attack in 2 nights and the third in just a week, one of part of a broader recent escalation by Russia that was brought A spike in civilian casualties despite ceasefire negotiations. Ukraine has also stepped up its own airstrikes on Russian territory, though a smaller scale and with far fewer civilian deaths. Overnight strikes underscore how months of diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire have failed to yield a breakthrough, as President Vladimir Putin of Russia has dragged his feet on agreeing to any temporary truce, adding conditions that he knows Ukraine will not accept. And after threatening for weeks to walk away from the negotiation, President Trump now appears to be doing exactly that, telling President Zelensky of Ukraine last week that Russia and Ukraine would have to find a solution to the war themselves. Oh, shit. Ukraine's Air Force said on Sunday that Russia had launched 69 ballistic and cruise missiles along with 298 attack drones, adding that about 2/3 of the missiles and nearly all the drones were shot down. The Air Force spokesman Yuri Hat said in an interview that it was the largest bombardment of the war in terms of number of weapons used. These numbers cannot be independently verified. So as you guys can see, man, absolutely crazy stuff going on out there in Eastern Europe. I got a news thing here. Let's tune in. I think this happened right after the attack.
Intensified its strikes on Ukraine with the highest number of drones and Russia has intensified its strikes on Ukraine with the highest number of drones and missiles launched in a single night yet. At one point, the whole of Ukraine was under an air alert as missiles were fired from the Black Sea and strategic bombers in Russia. Officials in the Ukrainian capital said around a dozen enemy drones had reached Kiev's airspace, which forced thousands to take shelter in metro stations and basements. It comes as the biggest prisoner of war exchange so far between Russia and Ukraine is now complete. These are the latest pictures we've received from Ukraine.
Bruh, that is cooked.
Ukraine's capital. 12 people are reported to have been killed in Kiev. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that America's silence and the silence of others in the world only encourages Vladimir Putin. Our correspondent in Kiev, James Waterhouse, says the impact of the overnight strikes are far-reaching.
This was a night where, according to Ukraine's Air Force, you've got more than 360 missiles and drones. That is the highest number yet since Russia started launching these huge air assaults in late 2022. In the time since, Moscow has been able to manufacture these drones at a much faster rate. There's also an arms race when it comes to drones between Ukraine and Russia. Both are being fitted with more sophisticated technology and packed with
Russia makes its own drones, and they also get drones from Iran as well.
More explosives, and I think that is now translating into, in the case of this weekend, for cities like Kyiv, 48 hours of pretty sustained bombardment. I mean, last night, the sirens went at midnight, and there were explosions right all the way through until sunrise. I mean, the skies were lit up with searchlights, and you could hear air defenses going off. You could see the occasional drone intercepted. You could hear their motors, and several regions in central, northern, southern Ukraine were targeted in this way, and that is why President Zelensky is again urging his allies to put more pressure on Russia to not just stop fighting, stop these aerial assaults, but also to engage in a ceasefire. But at the moment, his calls are falling on deaf ears.
So now let's go ahead and talk about how they did this. So let me show you guys some footage of the attack. Look at this. This comes from The Guardian. Look at that fucking huge ballistic missile right there. Let me see if I can make this bigger for you guys somehow. Look at that. Launched the capital by Russian overnight. Look at that explosion. It's among the deadliest attacks on Kiev in the 3-year war. 9 people have been killed and more than 60 wounded. I think, like I said before, the number's up to 12 now. So, you guys are probably wondering, how did Russia actually pull this off? Here's a video from AI Telly. Really good video. Why and how Russia is relaunching its attacks on Ukraine explained. Let's go ahead and go into this thing. I like this channel a lot.
Aerial assaults of the war against.
And then I'll also explain how the hell we got here. I am Seva says, hey Mark, completely off topic, but would like your opinion on purchasing this house for 130 to 150K, 13 miles from downtown Dallas. 2-bed, 2-bathroom, square feet for the house. All seen minor mold, leaking water and plumbing, good or bad buy. Bro, I'd have to like look at the numbers and stuff like that. I'd have to look at the numbers. I do that for people on Castle Club. If you're a member of Castle Club, jump on Castle Club, and when we do our Zoom call, I'll definitely go through the numbers with you. Russian attack 100% justified from this guy. Okay, that's from Tay. Now let me see if there's anything else I missed. All Russian nukes, guys. 5 and up is what I read. I'll show your chat on air, but I'm reading 5 and up. Unless it's Castle Club. Castle Club, I read no matter what.
Ukraine deploying a record number of drones and missiles in a coordinated multi-night campaign. These strikes targeted more than 30 cities and regions across the country. In an average single night, Russia reportedly launched approximately 367 drones and missiles. Ukrainian sources confirmed that this included 298 drones and 69 missiles. Despite the scale of the attack, Ukrainian air defenses, they successfully intercepted the majority of the projectiles, reportedly
air defenses that us in Europe gave them.
Shooting down 266 out of the 298
That's not bad. That's like damn near 90%.
drones and 45 of
So roughly 30 something got out. Roughly 30 something, 32 of the drones got through.
the missiles. These missiles were launched including multiple cruise missiles and not to forget the caliber ballistic missiles, in addition to a dozen KH-59 or KH-69 missiles, along with hundreds of drones were also used. This is how the assault followed a strategic sequence. The slower drone-like Shahed came first, followed by the faster Lancet drones.
The Shahed drones, if I'm not mistaken, I think those are Iranian drones, chat.
Then came the cruise missiles and finally the ballistic missiles. These are perfectly timed so that they more or less
And the reason why is you send the drones out first, and then these other missiles, the cheaper missiles, you send all those missiles out first so that they get intercepted, so the air defense wastes their missiles to shoot down the cheaper missiles, and then the ballistics, the missiles that actually, you know, have the most potential to cause damage, those are last.
reach at the same time to create chaos. Let's examine why Russia is focused on retaking areas in northeastern Ukraine. In addition to its ongoing aerial offensive, Russia has been amassing troops along the Ukrainian border. The apparent goal is to put pressure on Ukrainian forces stationed in the region, effectively pinning them in place. This strategy is designed to prevent Ukrainian troops from redeploying to the south, where they're
Now, this is very important because Russia has occupied this area. This is called the Crimean Peninsula down here, guys. And let's go ahead and show you guys this on a map. Right, and Russia's pretty much controlled this territory since, you know, like 2014. Right. There we go, boom. All right, here we go. So here you go. You go on a grand scale, right? Look at Russia, huge, 11 different time zones. Ukraine over here, also pretty big. I think Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken, is about the size of Texas. So here is Crimea. And this is what basically Russia holds on to because it's a very important strategic point where they have access to the waterways. Okay, and they took this over back in around 2014. And a lot of eastern Ukraine, as you guys can see here, is pretty much controlled by Russia now at this point. Also, you guys got to understand that a lot of these areas are ethnically Russian people. Okay, so that's another reason as well why they kind of voted to get out of the out of Ukraine. Well, let's keep going. Where are we at here? Yep.
They're urgently needed to counter Russia's summer offensives. By opening a new front in the northeast, Russia aims to divert Ukrainian forces away from other critical areas in the east and south, where Russian forces have been making slow but steady progress. This tactic is intended to stretch and weaken Ukrainian defense.
Yeah, I was going to bring Scott Ritter on today, guys, but he had a tight schedule. Don't worry, I'll bring him back, though.
Defenses across multiple fronts. One of Russia's key objectives appears to be a strategically important city in the northeast. It serves as a military hub with inherited Soviet-era military infrastructure, including arms depots and airbase.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Kharkiv is where Gonzalo Lira, a.k.a. Coach Red Pill, was, if I'm not mistaken, before he passed away. When the conflict first started, I think that's where he was.
Its location, just 20 miles from the Russian border.
And yes, the Ukrainians killed him. The SVU killed him, man, unfortunately.
makes it a
Rest in peace to him.
logistically feasible and attractive target.
He was right the whole fucking time. Because I remember he was on the ground reporting on this war back when it first started. And he said that Ukraine is losing. And they came and they fucking kidnapped his ass. Their secret police service. These pieces of shit right here. If you guys are wondering. Or is it SBU? I always get it mixed up. SBU. I'm sorry, John. Not SBU. SBU as in Bravo. Yeah, these guys right here, man. These guys killed fucking Coach Red Pill, man. These fucking scumbags. Yeah, so they're the main internal agency, security agency of the Ukrainian government. Its main duties include counterintelligence activity and combating organized crime and terrorism. Super fucking corrupt, these guys, man. Basically, there's like secret police.
Target for Russian forces. Why is Kharkiv so hard to capture? You think Kharkiv would be easy to take. It's just 30 kilometers from the Russian border. But that actually works against Russia. The moment they try to gather troops or equipment near the city, they're exposed to Ukrainian artillery and counterattacks, including strikes coming from across the border. And the terrain around Kharkiv? It's wide open and flat, a nightmare for attacking forces.
And also, guys, know this. As an attacking country, right, you have way less leverage and you are going to, it's much harder to be an attacking country versus a defending country. So Russia invading, they're inevitably going to be put in a position of disadvantage because whenever you are attacking, you have to basically, you don't know the territory as well as the defending nation. So the defending nation has a significant advantage. This is why, like, people like Bin Laden and the Mujahideen were able to fight off the Soviets because they couldn't traverse the Afghanistan mountains and fight them effectively, right? This is why we had such a hard time in the Middle East, you know, going after these Afghanis and these other terrorists in these countries because they knew the terrain and the terrain was to their advantage, very mountainous, difficult to find, etc.
Russian troops become easy targets for Ukraine's drones, precision artillery, and long-range weapons. There's very little natural cover. Ukraine's also spent years fortifying the city. There are reinforced defensive lines, trenches, and barriers surrounding Kharkiv. They've laid minefields and anti-tank traps along the major approach routes. Inside the city, it's even more complex. Ukraine has turned the urban environment itself into a weapon, using buildings, subways, and civilian infrastructure to move, hide, and fight. As we're watching this while you are in flight mode and you're being bombarded with all kinds of spam emails, jump calls, Ukraine, we need to try.
All right, so now we're going to get into why Russia invaded Ukraine. This is very important, chat. I'm going to add some commentary here as well to give even more context on some of this stuff because a lot of people aren't necessarily as familiar with, you know, Russian and Ukrainian geopolitics and what's going on. So let's get into it.
To really understand why Putin invaded Ukraine, we need to try seeing things from his or Russia's point of view.
Which the Western media almost never fucking does.
And for that, we have to rewind all the way back to the Soviet era. At that time, Russia controlled a vast expanse of land across Europe, and its borders were much easier to defend. The northern European plain, which runs through much of Eastern Europe, didn't extend as far into Russia, making it harder for invaders to reach the Russian heartland. If NATO had wanted to strike, it would have had to pass through a narrow, flat region in central Germany. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the political and security...
And this was in the early 90s, right around 1990, 1991, the fall of the Soviet Union happened, which obviously was a very dark time for Russia, an extremely dark time for Russia. And Putin was not in power yet. I think he might have been KGB at this point.
Security situation in Europe changed
He's former KGB.
dramatically. NATO, which was originally a defensive alliance, began expanding steadily.
Now, this is what the Western media never ever talks about. How NATO expansion provoked Russia into doing what they did in February of 2022. The reality is that, look, if you're going to continue to expand NATO closer and closer and closer to Russia's, to Moscow, well, that's a problem for them because now their national security is threatened, right? And the thing is that, you know, we have to be very honest with ourselves here. I said this yesterday and I'll say it again. Putin had more justification to enter Ukraine, right, and conduct this conflict than we did invading Iraq. And some people some people agree with me on that. Some people get mad at me for that. Some people say, oh, you're a Russian shill, blah, blah, blah. No, the reality is I understand that other countries are going to want to practice national security to protect their sovereignty. right? We're not the only country that has national security measures where we want to, ensure that we're in a position where we're not necessarily vulnerable to our enemies. Same exact situation with Russia. Ukraine, which has been a Soviet Union territory forever, right? A lot of these Ukrainians, especially in eastern Ukraine, are ethnically Russians. They're basically like brothers. So he looks at it like, yo, if Ukraine falls and becomes a member of NATO, which is what Zelensky was trying to do, by the way, FYI, he was trying to join NATO. He absolutely was, despite the fact that he says that he wasn't. He was, right? That would have been really bad for Russia from a national security perspective. And the problem with this is that we've been promising Russia that we're not going to expand NATO for decades. Multiple presidents have promised all the way back to fucking Lincoln. I said Lincoln, excuse me. Clinton, right? Since fucking Bill Clinton was in office, we've been promising that we would not expand NATO. But we kept doing it.
In 1999, countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic joined. Then in 2004, NATO added Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia,
And you guys can see here, they're gaining power, strength, and numbers. Obviously, Russia's looking at this from Moscow like, fuck.
Slovenia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. In the following years, Croatia and Albania became members in 2009, Montenegro in 2017, and North Macedonia in 2020. As NATO continued to expand eastward, Russia became increasingly alarmed. Its greatest fear was that Ukraine, which shares a 2,000...
And that was the last stronghold. Ukraine was supposed to be the last stronghold, and that was the red line. So that is a big reason why they invaded. And it's amazing to me how American media never covers this. They never talk about this. They just say, Putin bad, Russia evil, dictator. But they don't talk about why he did what he did. They don't talk about how he lied to the Russians for decades, saying we will not expand NATO, we will not go ahead and be right up on your border. But we kept doing it anyway. You got people like Zelensky, who, by the way, is a puppet. He was put in power by the West, okay, because he is favorable to the West, hence why he's getting all this aid right now. He is a puppet, okay? Back in 2013, 2014-ish, guys, there was a coup, okay, in Ukraine, and a color revolution. And basically what happened with this, I think it's called the Maidan Revolution, if I'm not mistaken. Someone in chat, please correct me if I'm wrong, right? Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and just look it up. I think it's called the Maidan Revolution. Let's see here if I am correct. Boom. Damn, I'm good. All right. The Revolution of Dignity. What's the actual thing for it, though? Okay, or also known as the Maidan Revolution. Bam. Let's go, baby. Let's fucking go. This is all off top, by the way, right? Took place in Ukraine in February 2014 at the end of the Euromaidan protests, when deadly clashes between protesters and the state forces in the capital of Kiev culminated in the ousting of President Viktor Yanukovych. The return of the 2004 Constitution of Ukraine and the outbreak of 2014 Russo-Ukrainian War. Basically, long story short, we were involved in a color revolution to topple a pro-Russia influenced government and put a more Western-friendly government. And the thing is that this isn't a battle of Russia versus Ukraine. This is a battle of, is Ukraine going to get Russian influence, or are they going to get Western influence? That's the reality, okay? That's what this war really is, okay? It's not about Ukraine. It's about who is Ukraine going to be influenced by? Are they going to be influenced by the NATO powers, the United States and Western Europe, or are they going to be influenced by Russia? And Putin looked at it like, if we're not influencing you, we're not going to let the West influence you. And that's why he basically invaded, because Zelensky was basically flirting with and more than likely trying to push to get into NATO. And this revolution here back in 2013, 2014 was kind of the first shot that no one ever talks about, especially in Western media. No one ever talks about this, how we fucking toppled their government with intelligence agencies from the West. Right? So so in November 2013, a wave of large-scale protests known as the Euromaidan began in response to President Yanukovych's decision not to sign a political association and free trade agreement with the European Union, right? Why? Because he was more, a bit more pro-Russia, right? Instead, choosing closer ties to Russia. Euromaidan soon developed into the largest democratic mass movement in Europe since 1989. Earlier that year, the Verkhovna Rada, that's their parliament, had overwhelmingly approved finalizing the EU association agreement. Russia had pressured Ukraine to reject it. The scope of the protests widened with calls for the resignation of Yanukovych, and the Azarov government. Protesters opposed what they saw as widespread government corruption and abuse of power, the influence of Russian oligarchs, police brutality, human rights violation. violations and repressive anti-protest laws. Long story short, the government didn't like the fact that Yanukovych wanted to be more pro-Russia, and they overthrew him. And they were absolutely assisted by Western intelligence agencies. Okay? This is really when the war started, chat, FYI. But Western media fucking never covers this. They start the conflict just like the Zionists. Just like the Zionists always talk about the conflict starting on October 7th. People that are pro-Ukraine never talk about this conflict happening in 2013, 2014-ish. Ever. They never talk about this. They just go right to February of 2022. Anyway, let's keep going.
300.
Give me ones in the chat if that makes sense, guys. Give me ones in the chat if that makes sense. And I really want you guys to understand this because the mainstream media will not show this shit. For a long time, guys, if you said any type of, if you had a podcast or a YouTube channel where you talked about the Russian perspective of this, you would get fucking banned. Jackson Hinkle got banned for this shit. Gonzalo Lira got killed for this shit. Right? Scott Ritter also heavily shadow banned on YouTube and everywhere else for talking about this. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I don't know why they don't invite Russia to NATO. Good question. So this actually came out when Tucker interviewed Putin, guys. And Russia actually wanted to join NATO, but you know why they didn't let Russia in? I'll tell you why. 3 words, my friends. Military-industrial complex. That is why. Those 3 words are why they will not allow Russia into NATO. Because you need an enemy to justify arms sales, arm export, and continue to have this global weapons marketplace that is worth billions, if not trillions of dollars. You need an enemy to justify weapons sales. And Russia is that enemy. That is why they will not allow Russia into NATO. That is why they will not necessarily have peace, because the arms trade, the weapons trade is far too lucrative. Okay? They need conflict to make money. War makes money. Makes a lot of people rich. All right? So that is why. Good question, though. Good question. And that's the red pill that no one wants to hear. That's the red pill that nobody wants to hear when I talk about how Russia wanted to join NATO. And I think it was Clinton, if I'm not mistaken, stiffed him. It was Clinton or Bush. Bush Jr. One of those two stiffed him. Let's get back to it.
100-kilometer border with Russia might eventually be invited to join the alliance. For Moscow, that would have been a huge strategic problem. The idea of NATO moving closer to Russia's doorstep was something it simply couldn't overlook.
All right, someone says it was Clinton. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I knew it was either Bush or Clinton that would not let him into NATO.
Let's take a look at the timeline from 2014. Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych abruptly pulls back from signing the long-anticipated free trade agreement with the
Exactly what I told you guys before.
European Union. The decision sparks massive protests across the country,
Which we paid for, by the way. We paid for these protests. We paid for this color revolution. United States and the Western powers. They wanted this government overthrown.
as many Ukrainians see the move as a step away from European integration and a tilt toward Russia. March 2014, with Russian troops already
Boom, here's that Crimean Peninsula I told you guys about.
in control of Crimea, the region's parliament votes to secede from
Also, just so you guys know, Crimea is like 90% ethnically Russian as well.
Ukraine and join Russia. A public
Also, just so you guys know, when Russia invaded Ukraine and took it, when Russia took Crimea, we sanctioned the fuck out of them. The Obama administration sanctioned the hell out of Russia back then when this all happened. And it actually hurt Russia's economy quite a bit. So Russia, knowing that the United States can sanction them at any time and freeze their money, which I think we still have a bunch of their money frozen up, right? What did they do? They started leaning on partners like China, North Korea, etc. They started trying to make their own currency with BRICS. And on top of that, Putin bought a bunch of fucking gold. So when they invaded in 2022, guess what? The sanctions from the West have not hurt them that much. Russia's like the 5th strongest economy in the world now, despite the fact that we are heavily sanctioning them from their invasion of Ukraine. So this, my friends, is why Putin has no real need to negotiate with the United States. For what? The sanctions don't hurt him. He has a bunch of gold. The economy's gotten stronger. He insulated himself preparing for this invasion of 2022. Trust me, they've been talking about doing this invasion for a very long time because they always didn't like the fact that Ukraine was flirting with NATO. And he finally pulled the trigger and made it happen. And at that point, they had themselves ready to deal with a sanctioned Russia because they were self-sufficient. That's what happened, chat. And this is what Western media doesn't want you guys to know. This stuff right here, if I told you guys this 2 years ago, I'd get banned on fucking YouTube. Deadass. They're considered misinformation because the Biden administration didn't want you guys knowing the truth when it comes to what's going on with this conflict with Ukraine and Russia. Why? Because the Biden family has an enormous stake in Ukraine, okay? Enormous. During Obama's presidency, one of the things that Biden spent a significant amount of time doing when he was vice president was visiting Ukraine, okay? He pushed to get a prosecutor fired. Literally talked about it on open air, right? Super corrupt. Him and his son, Burisma, all that. They had a bunch of business dealings with the Ukrainians. That is why we came to Ukraine's aid so heavily back in 2022 when this all happened, okay? And also Russia felt emboldened because Biden's a fucking retard. And now we're in a mess that we can't really get out of. It's very difficult. Even Trump is having a tough time coordinating and negotiating with Putin right now because he has all the cards. He has all the cards. The sanctions don't do shit. He's winning the war. He wants to go ahead and get as much territory as he can so he ensures that NATO will no longer come to his doorsteps. And he's tried to negotiate and make peace before, but we violated it. The Minsk agreements, etc. We violated so many different agreements that we've made with Russia. We're not expanding NATO. So, yes, the sanctions don't do shit anymore.
Referendum follows with 97% of voters reportedly supporting the move, though the results are widely disputed by the international community. April 2014, tensions escalate as 40,000 Russian troops amass on Ukraine's eastern border. Violence erupts in the Donbas region where...
Now, the reason why this is so big, guys, is because the Ukrainians were killing these ethnic Russians that wanted to separate from Ukraine. So the Russian military mobilized to try to protect these ethnic Russians.
Pro-Russian separatists clash with Ukrainian forces. April 2021.
It was damn near a genocide. They massacred those people.
Russia ramps up its military presence near Ukraine, deploying around 100,000 troops to the border.
And just so you guys know, so you get a mind of what kind of man Putin is. Putin is a hardcore Russian nationalist, okay? Hardcore, okay? A lot of people call him a fascist, whatever the fuck you want to call him. But the point is he cares very much for the Russian people.
In response, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calls on...
Yeah, comes into power now. Zelensky got put into power after that other guy got fucking toppled, and Zelensky is a puppet for the West.
NATO to accelerate...
an actor slash comedian slash cokehead.
Ukraine's path to membership, citing growing security concerns. This is a map of Ukraine in the year 2022. The area marked in red shows Crimea, which Russia had already annexed. This is February 2022. At this point, a critical mistake was made by the Russian generals. They assumed that taking Ukraine would be easy and spread their forces across the country. This is the map from March 2022. The areas marked in red and checkered show the rapid advance of the Russian army. However, on November 22nd, this is where things took an unexpected turn. Ukraine fought back fiercely, reclaiming...
The West fought back fiercely. The West fought back fiercely. It wasn't Ukraine. It was our weapons, our technology, our resources.
Significant ground and shocking the Russian military. By February 2025, the Russian army appears to be making some advances, but at a much slower pace than anticipated.
You guys can see they pretty much got the southeast portion of Ukraine pretty much dominated and controlled.
This is how Russia is using these Orlan drones capable of penetrating up to 600 kilometers.
And like I said before, Crimea, that peninsula, is critical for the Russians because it's a strategic port for them.
To Ukrainian territory. The second type of drones are FPV, guided by...
I think they have their Navy station there, if I'm not mistaken.
Fiber optic cables. These have a range of only 1 kilometer or about one
big Navy base.
0.2 miles. Standard FPV or first-person view drones, on the other hand, have a range of 10 kilometers or roughly 5 miles and more. Next are the Lancet drones. These are advanced main battle tank killers capable of flying for 40 kilometers or about 24 miles. Finally, there are the Iranian Shahed drones, which can travel up to 1,000 kilometers or approximately 620 miles. These drones can cause significant damage when launched in large numbers. More details all in the video ahead. In the era of drone warfare, Russia's strategy unfolds through a series of coordinated stages. each designed to maximize the effectiveness of their aerial assets. Stage 1. Surveillance and target acquisition. The first stage involves the use of Orlan drones for surveillance. These drones are critical in scanning the battlefield for Ukrainian targets, serving as the tip of the spear in the process of identifying and selection. Stage 2. Precision strikes with Lancet drones. Once targets such as Ukrainian tanks or Gepard anti-aircraft guns are identified, the next step is to launch Lancet drones. These drones are deployed to destroy or severely damage the identified targets with precision. Before we examine how it works, let's look at its parts. Although the Lancet can be operated by a two-man crew, but behind the scene it has a number of parts that helps it to operate in the battlefield. Number 1. It requires a catapult to launch a drone. Number 2. An Orlan drone that is responsible for navigation and observation for the Lancet. Number 3. A command and control center is required to operate the Orlan as well as the Lancet drone, as data regarding the Lancet drone are still classified. Let's take a look at the parts as a possible theory. Again, I repeat, this is a possible theory of the engineering behind the drone. At the front of the drone is the electro-optical guidance systems. These cameras act as a light contrasting edge of the target, dark or light against the general background, to track and guide itself. In short, it acts as a guidance mechanism. Just behind the guidance system is the warhead. It is the typical KZ-6, a high-explosive circular, shaped charge used for demolition primarily to penetrate armor and reinforced concrete fortifications. Moving to the back is the electric-powered engine that propels the drone to the standard speed of 110 kilometers per hour or 68 miles per hour. Interestingly, this drone can operate only for 40 minutes, almost similar to the Switchblade 600. These are the step-by-step process of how this works. Step number 1. 2 soldiers launch a surveillance drone named Orlan using a catapult system. Step number 2. The Orlan drone tracks and selects targets. Step number 3. A soldier unfolds the Lancet drone wings and sets it up for catapult launch. Step number 4. The Orlan command and control system transfer data target to the Lancet drone. Step number 5. The Lancet drone switches to its electro-optical guidance systems as directed by the Orlan command and control center. Step number 6. The Lancet drone will dive into the target and activate the typical KZ-6, a high-explosive circular, shaped charge used for demolition primarily to penetrate armor and reinforced concrete fortifications. Let's simplify again through these animations. The Orlan command and control system transfers target data to the Lancet drone. The Lancet switches to its electro-optical guidance systems to track its target. It then descends upon the target using its KZ explosives to penetrate light armor, artillery, guns, or trucks. Stage 3. Saturation attacks with Shahed drones. In the third stage, Russia employs low-cost Iranian Shahed drones which are launched in large numbers, sometimes up to 200 at a time. The affordability of these drones allows for mass deployment, overwhelming Ukrainian defenses, and increasing the likelihood of successful strikes. The sheer volume of Shahed drones in the air serves to saturate the battlefield, making it difficult for Ukrainian forces to counter all of them. Do check out our original animated video on anti-aircraft gun like the M2 Browning, how to fire at an enemy aircraft, and the ZU-23 and how to operate them. So stay subscribed to not miss a beat.
All right. I got to get going here in a little bit, guys. Well, let's go ahead.
To the battle.
Now we're going to go ahead and get into Trump responding to these attacks.
The New York Post cover calling out the, quote, war of words between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Tensions are rising.
So now we know why Putin attacked in the first place back in 2022. We see what the war's going on now. We saw how they attacked just now recently. Now here's Trump's response, because he's been trying to make a deal with these guys for a while.
Russia launched its largest attacks of the entire 3-year war this weekend. Here's the president on Sunday.
I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened.
And the reason why Trump is so mad is because he launched this attack right after they had done a hostage deal. They did a hostage swap, and Trump was talking with Putin. They had a 2-hour-long phone call, and he still did this mission. He did this operation. So obviously Trump is pissed off.
To Putin, I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him. But he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all.
A few hours later, the president posted that Putin has gone absolutely crazy, exclamation point. The Kremlin responded with, this is a very crucial moment, which is associated with, of course, the emotional overload and with emotional reactions.
Bruh, this nigga saying Trump is emotional? Come on, man.
Just last Monday, President Trump and Putin of Russia held a 2-hour phone call on a potential ceasefire. Here's White House Ukraine envoy, retired Lieutenant General.
And that's why he's so mad. 2-hour phone call, hostage deal, and then he still launches this attack. But you guys know now you guys know. They launched the attack because they wanted to draw forces away from the south, aka a very strategic critical point for them, the Crimean Peninsula and that southeastern region.
General Keith Kellogg.
He's done more in 120 days than the previous administration did 1,200.
I'll give him credit for that. That Trump actually, at least he had a phone call with Putin. Guys, Biden didn't talk to Putin for years.
Days. I think he just needs to keep at it. It's frustrating, I know that. But the only guy that can do this is President Trump. You know, negotiations are never easy, but there's nowhere this war is going to end through violence, through killing of soldiers on either side.
Right.
It's going to come down to negotiation.
President Trump also signaled he's absolutely considering new sanctions against Russia. The New York Post editorial board headline, New Sanctions Can Shock Crazy Putin to His Senses. In focus now, Republican Congressman Brian Mast of the great state of Florida, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Great to see you. Always thank you for your service as well. Look, Congressman, we are at a point now where
This fucking guy is really fucking shill right here.
President Trump seems to be running out of patience with Putin. And that means money taken away from the Russian people. Will that work?
No, because the sanctions clearly have not worked. We've been sanctioning the fuck out of them for years, and nothing's happened. Their economy has gotten better. Sanctions don't work a lot of the times, man. They just do business with other people. We kicked them off of SWIFT, didn't do shit.
I think it's a big part of it. I think Putin is negotiating this, not even negotiating, looking for his terms at the table.
Yeah.
And he reads this as, if he can continue to take life and if he can continue to take land and kilometers away from Ukraine, then that puts him in a stronger position to get all of the terms that he wants. And I don't think that he looks at anything other than that, doesn't see the value of life. And so I think President Trump justly characterizes him as crazy. If you have no value in human life, then you are a crazy person. Does he see the loss of resources in terms of 10% or greater of his economy just going to military spending, the extreme high inflation going on in Russia right now, the inability to provide for their people, and the sanctions going on, not just against Russia?
Bruh, have you seen Moscow? They're thriving, bro. This is Western propaganda right here. Western propaganda.
But against those that are going to buy from Russia, yeah, that's going to continue to cripple their economy. But at a certain point, he has to either, take value for human life, or everybody's going to recognize that he is the war criminal that we have been saying that he is. And I would just make one other point on this. Even if Putin is in a strong position because he can continue to take life and take land, he's getting himself into a position, I think, that the world never takes him or Russia back.
So that's interesting. And clearly he's all in, doesn't matter.
Bro, why are they trying to negotiate with him then? This Brian Mast guy's a retard. I'll be honest with y'all. This guy is a hardcore Zionist shill. Stupid as fuck. Wore an IDF fucking uniform to a government building, a U.S. government building. This guy is fucking pathetic.
No matter what it costs in terms of hurting his own people, he doesn't care. And we've always known that about him. That's not breaking news about Putin. But at this point in history, he thinks that he can win. Can he?
I think he can continue, just what I said, I think he can continue to take land and life. Now, there are some positive things that are going on in this situation as well. You have Ukraine and you have Russia in direct talks with one another right now. You have Ukraine and Russia exchanging prisoners right now. They've exchanged about 600 troops each side in total. By the end of this week, probably they'll be up to 1,000. So you have some positive things going on. And on the Ukrainian side, you do have them with the capabilities to actually hit inside Russia proper. Russia has had to close down commerce in different places, in different airports, because Ukraine is taking the fight to them. But Ukraine essentially cannot stop them right now. I'd use the words of Marco Rubio last week when he testified to me. He said, listen, Russia wants something that doesn't belong to them, and Ukraine cannot take back what's stolen from them right now. That's the difficult position that we're in.
Wow. Just real quickly, yes or no, are we going to help them with the air support that Ukraine is begging for right now?
I think we're going to continue to allow European countries to give to Ukraine what they're asking for. They have to ask permission from the United States of America if they got those weapons from us, if we sold them to them. We will continue to allow that to take place.
All right, we'll move to this. President Trump is now giving the United States Senate the go-ahead to make changes to the big, beautiful bill that passed the House last week. Watch.
Do you have a message for the Senate? A lot of Republicans have said there are going to be significant changes to the budget bill. Well, I want the Senate and the senators to change, to make the changes they want, and we'll go back to the House and we'll see if we can get them. In some cases, those changes maybe are something I'd agree with, to be honest. It happens.
Some Senate Republicans have warned the bill will be dead on arrival without some significant changes. And Senators Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, Mike.
Think CD says, if NATO was a problem, why did they invade Ukraine but not Estonia? Estonia is closer to Moscow. Why invade Georgia in 08 when there's a mountain on the border, but let Finland right next to St. Petersburg? Because a lot of these countries were neutral, my friend. Like, for example, Finland didn't join NATO until after Russia invaded in 22, for example.
Mike Lee, Josh Hawley want changes.
Or even if they were in NATO, they were extremely neutral, right? Not as adversarial. But Ukraine is the red line because the border it shares with it is huge. It's not just a proximity to Moscow. It's also proximity to the country itself and the land border size. So Moscow is just one component to, protecting national security for Russia.
Such as larger spending cuts and Medicaid reforms. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson.
I encourage them, to do their work, of course, as we all anticipate.
Mr. TT says, Putin had a drone assassination attempt sent from Ukraine. Can you really blame him? Also, breaking President Trump pardons rapper NBA Youngboy. Wow, that's fucking hilarious. Why? Nigga's a criminal, bro. Chris says, I just got fired from my job for no reason. I'm from the UK, and every workplace I go to just feels like I'm in a foreign country. Employers would rather employ foreigners than its own British people because they know they can get away with mistreatment. That's crazy, bro. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're not talking about political stuff at work, man. That might be another reason why you're getting in trouble.
But to make as
gotta be careful with that stuff, man.
Few modifications to this package as possible, because remembering that we've got to pass it one more time to ratify their changes in the House. And I have a very delicate balance here, a very delicate equilibrium that we've reached over a long period of time, and it's best not to meddle with it too much.
What do you forecast here, Congressman?
I think the point that Speaker Johnson is making is that it should be easier for the Senate to get 51 votes than it is for the House to get 218 votes. We just have a different amount of personalities that you have to deal with. Again, to look at what the president said, we hope that the Senate looks at it very seriously, makes positive changes that can benefit the United States of America, like what we put in there, right? Lowering taxes on Social Security and tips and on overtime, and making sure that we raise the child tax credit and the standard deduction and the amount that small businesses are taxed from 20 to 23%. All very positive changes.
Yeah, I don't know why I pardon NBA Youngboy. NBA Youngboy is a fucking scumbag, bro. Like, what's up with pardoning these fucking criminals, bro? Larry Hoover's a crook. Like, I don't get it, dude. Like,
let's make sure we keep work requirements for people on Medicaid. You're talking to somebody missing 2 legs and a finger, and I can tell you, people need that work. You got to go out there. Just because we're not 100% doesn't mean that we don't go out there and have that purpose of work.
Amen. And always thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Congressman Mass, before I let you go, in terms of those things that you...
Bro showed up to Congress wearing an IDF uniform, bro. Big L. Bombards!
You just mentioned, that's what the president promised he would do. You all, as you just said, passed it in the House, and they only need 51. I say only, it's still a big haul, but still, can the Senate get it done? And what would you say to those senators who have a laundry list right now?
I would say you can get it done. Remember, this is about the American people. You don't always need the whole loaf of bread.
Yo, guys, do me a favor. Smash that like button, guys. Let's get to 1,000, 1,500 likes, 2,000 likes, somewhere around there. Shorter show today, guys. We're We're going to do an interview with Noble Gold here in a second. And then we are going to do some after hours for you guys. And we're going to do a subathon. It's going to be a good time. We're just going to keep the stream running after hours.
Right at once, right? Sometimes you can take it slice by slice.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of great slices of this loaf. Let's move it forward and make it so that we don't even have to send it back to the House. Let's get it to the president's desk before Independence Day, before 4th of July, and show the American people what we can get done for them.
Well, look, Senator Marsha Blackburn of the great state of Tennessee has a no tax on security. You know, and she's saying that would be a tax on top of tax. That's something that you might see in one of those maybe carve-out type situations. We'll see how it pans out. Congressman, thank you.
Thank you, Harris.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here.
All right, let's go ahead and click the Putin assassination attempt as well, because we didn't get to talk about this. I think this is another reason, too, why Putin is pissed off.
Vladimir Putin's
war is real, man.
A shocking claim has come to the fore, suggesting that Russian President Vladimir Putin's helicopter came under attack by Ukrainian drones. This as Putin traveled to Russia's border region of Kursk on May 20th in an unannounced visit confirmed by the Kremlin. A top Russian military commander has claimed Ukrainian drones targeted Putin's aircraft mid-flight, as per reports. Yuri Dashkin, head of a Russian air defense unit, reportedly said that Putin's helicopter was at the attack's epicenter, as a large-scale drone assault began as the Russian president flew over Kursk. Russian air defenses reportedly engaged the drones, while the presidential helicopter was still airborne. Notably, it was Putin's first trip to Kursk since Moscow claimed to have pushed back Ukrainian troops last month. During his visit, he met with volunteers, regional officials, and acting governor Alexander Kinstein. His stop in Kursk came weeks after Russia declared the region was liberated from Ukrainian incursions. But Ukraine insisted that its operations continue, despite Russian claims of full control in the border zone. On May 21st, Ukraine's army said its units remain active near Kursk and continue to inflict damage. Earlier this month, Ukrainian troops were said to have breached the Russian border near the village of Tetkino. Meanwhile, U.S. President Trump has warned Putin that trying to take all of Ukraine will lead to Russia's downfall.
I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
President, what do you want to do about that?
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised. We'll see what we're going to do. What am I going to tell you? You're the fake news, aren't you?
Bruh, this nigga, man. Yo, that is... You're the fake news. Bro, the fact that he's so unprofessional is fucking hilarious, man. I love it, bro. I love it, man. Oh, man.
You're totally fake. All right, any other questions? I don't like what Putin is doing, not even a little bit. He's killing people. And something happened to this guy, and I don't like it.
Can I follow up on that? A Russian commander reportedly said that Putin was almost caught in the middle of a drone attack from Ukraine. So do you have any...
I haven't heard that, but maybe that would be a reason. I don't know, but I have not heard that.
All right. So, okay, guys. So, yo, Bills, Mo, Bill's here yet?
So I know all you guys remember Donald Trump had Zelensky in the White House. Had to be a few months ago now. And
all right, we'll go ahead and let this liberal talk about this.
The clip went mega viral because he basically berated the guy, right? He basically berated him in front of the world. Quite a message to send when Zelensky is the head of a country that got offensively and illegally invaded by Russia. Of course, Putin was ecstatic about that fact. But at the same time, remember, Trump was trying to make a deal with Ukraine. And the deal effectively is like, hey, you got to give us half of your shit from now until forever if you want us to keep supporting you. Basically, like the minerals and the ports and their natural resources. It really is economic colonization of Ukraine being done by the U.S. And of course, Zelensky, he's in a no-win situation, because if you don't get the help, Vladimir Putin could just take your whole country and you have nothing. Or you make a deal with the devil with Trump and the U.S., and you're submitting to economic colonization where the U.S. steals like 50% of your shit from now until forever, right? So really put him in an unwinnable situation.
Yeah, this guy's a Wokey. This is Kyle Kulinski, guys. For example, he thinks the judge in Minneapolis that, that went ahead and covered for that illegal alien, like, he thinks that she's innocent. Like, that goes to show you guys, like, how these Wokies are. He's a friend of your boy Hassan Piker. But anyway, guys, I'm going to end the stream here. We are going to go ahead and go into Fresh and Fit. Going to have a talk with Noble Gold. It's going to be a short interview. Going to talk about, money, how gold is affecting with all the warfare going on, etc. So jump on in, guys. We're going to rate it over there right now. Fresh and Fit, come on over. Going live in a few minutes. Okay, guys, so come on over. I'm going to raid Fresh and Fit on YouTube. And love you, ninjas. We'll be back with the subathon later tonight as well with some girls, so it's going to be a good time. You guys know what time it is.